Good morning, everybody. Today we are going to be in Miss Ross's kitchen for her cooking show. And we are going to be making baked cinnamon sugar donuts. Those recipes, or the recipe for that, the donuts we're making today is already on the Google Classroom under the recipes Dropbox that I created. So you can follow along based on that. I do have it here in front of me just so that I make sure I don't miss something or go through, vary from the way I want you to do it. Some things that before we get started, you'll notice if you open up the recipe, down at the bottom, there's actually some notes. I don't know how well you can see that, but first of all, a lot of people don't have access to buttermilk. One, because it's sold out, two, because you've never used it before, three, because it's just not one of those things that a lot of people, unless you're doing a lot of baking or a lot of fried chicken, you're going to keep buttermilk in the house all that often. But there's a little trick. You don't actually need to have buttermilk. You can actually make your own. So I'm going to do that before I do anything else so that I make sure that it is ready to go, because it does take a few minutes. So if you look on the recipe, it says 2/3 of a cup of buttermilk. We are going to make that buttermilk by taking just under 2/3 of a cup of regular milk, and then mixing that with a little bit of lemon juice or cream of tartar. Cream of tartar is found in the spice aisle, but it is not a spice. We actually talked about it at the start of the year when we did the herbs and spices unit. It is just a white powder, and it's ascorbic acid. So it's just it's in a powdered form of an acid. So it's used to mimic acids in foods. So, but lemon juice works just fine, and I have some fresh lemons, so that's what we're gonna do. Challenge of being in my own kitchen is I have everything I need, but it's not necessarily remembered to take all of it out. So I have my cookie cutters for other projects, and my Measure Your Life in Love giant cookie, liquid measuring cup, and I am going to put just under 2/3. I don't particularly like this measuring cup because it's not see-through, but it does have the measurements on the inside, and it's just really easy because it is so big. So I do like that, but I don't use it all that often in reality, just because it's really kind of bulky and it's not see-through, which makes it harder to measure accurately. All right, so there's 2/3 of a cup of milk, just under 2/3 of a cup of milk, and I'm going to take a lemon. And I have a juicer. You don't need one. I like my juicer, but you can just squeeze it. It's not that big of a deal. I like this one because my hands, especially with all the rain we've had lately, can cause my arthritis to get really bad. So, all right, so there's my lemon juicer. My lemon away, and I'm good to go. And that's all I need to do for that. You just leave it there for about 5 minutes, and it'll be good to go. The lemon juice actually sours the milk to create buttermilk. So, all right. So while that is working, I can go ahead and get started with the other things. I am going to whisk together my flour, my sugar, my baking powder, my salt, my cinnamon, and my nutmeg in a mixing bowl. You can do this with a great big stand mixer, but you don't really need to. This bowl will work just fine, but I did want to, if you want to use a mixer, it's not really that big of a deal. So I'm going to whisk together my flour, my sugar, my baking powder. So I'm going to measure those out. I have a lot of bulk of everything. So this is my flour. Make sure you know which ones are which. And I need 2 1/4 cups. Using my fractions, I can either do my 1/4 cup 4 times, 4 times, and a 1 time, so that I get all the quarters, or I can just use my 1 cup twice and my 1/4 cup once. Do not pack this down. Remember, when you work with flour, you just want to smooth it off. You can do that with the backside of a butter knife. Works really, really well. But you never want to pack flour down because you want it to, otherwise you'll end up with way too much flour in your recipe, and then it'll end up really heavy, and you don't want that to happen. If you want a lighter donut, you can actually make these, take out a little bit of flour, like half a cup, and add in an equal amount of cornstarch, or no, sorry, there's a 3-to-1 ratio, 3 tablespoons of flour to 1 tablespoon of cornstarch. And it will do the same thing, and it just make sure of your ratios, but you can use that to make a fluffier product. I like a nice cakey donut, so I am not doing that today. 2/3 of a cup of sugar. Now, funny thing about my 1/3 of a cup, I use it for my coffee because it is exactly the amount I need for my coffee grounds. So I do need to wipe this out because I made coffee this morning. Technically, actually, my son made my coffee this morning, so that was really cool of him. He's taken to doing that for me, which has been really nice. He's even learned to mix it the way I like it, so it's ready for me when I come downstairs. Kind of awesome. Kids, this is a good lesson to learn. Help your mom and dad out making their coffee. Okay. All right, so there's my sugar. I'm gonna need the sugar again for the topping of the donut, but we're not there yet, so we'll just keep going. 2 teaspoons of baking powder. This is the biggest bag of baking powder I think I've ever seen. We went to Costco like a year ago. And we ended up with the biggest bag of this stuff ever. So I need, we may never go through this. 2 teaspoons. Put it in my laundry. If you didn't know, you can put this in right into your laundry along with your detergent, like a half a cup per load. Helps your clothes to get that stinky smell out. That beeping was my oven. It is preheated to 375. Okay. Cinnamon, nutmeg. I need 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, 1 teaspoon of salt, and a half teaspoon of nutmeg. Nutmeg is a wonderful spice, but it is very, very strong, so you don't need very much to go a long way. I have my salt. Pour over a paper towel because I'm going to spread it everywhere otherwise. The salt in this recipe is actually there to help bring out other flavors and to create depth of flavor. You're not going to get a salty donut, I promise. Okay, and then nutmeg. You can buy ground nutmeg, but I love the fresh stuff. It is literally a nut. Looks like a nut. Smells like a nut. It's very, very strong scented, so you don't need very much, especially when you grind it yourself. Take a little bit of it's a very fine grater, and making sure you keep your fingers out of the way, grind it up. It has this pretty, pretty pattern. I don't know how well you can see that. If you've ever had a cookie and you're like, oh, it has this warm flavor, like it's not temperature warm, it just feels like homey and stuff, that's generally the nutmeg. They might have put a little bit of nutmeg in it. You might not notice the nutmeg flavor, but you notice a warmth to the tongue. You can actually keep using this little guy. You can keep putting him back. He doesn't go bad for a very long time because they're dried out, so not a problem. Okay, we are going to need more of that, both of those later. We'll go to make the topping. I am going to whisk these together. You can see them all in there. And the whisking at this point is not adding air, it's just blending all of the dried ingredients together so that they're evenly spaced, so that all the donuts get all the things. Okay. All right, and now I'm going to whisk together the buttermilk, egg, melted butter, and vanilla. I do need to melt my butter. I have 2 tablespoons of butter in here. Just going to put it in the microwave for about 15 seconds. Doesn't need to be a long time. If you look at your buttermilk, you look at your milk and onion, lemon juice mixture, you'll notice it's starting to kind of like get all clumpy a little bit. That's what you're looking for. That's how you know it's working. forgot another mixing bowl. My butter is not quite melted. It's still a little chunky, so I'm going to put it back in for another 10 seconds or so. You want to make sure with butter that when you're melting it in the microwave, you don't do it too fast. Don't do like a minute at a time. It will start splattering everywhere. It makes a heck of a mess, and it's really a pain to clean up. Okay, cool. All right, so there is my butter. And I'm going to whisk this with my buttermilk, my vanilla. I use the Good Stuff at home. This is about $15 to $16 for this little container, but the flavor is so much better than the imitation stuff that we have to use at school just for things. But just know that 2 teaspoons of vanilla. Somebody asked me why vanilla is brown, because we think of vanilla as being white. It's not really. It's the color of the vanilla bean after it's been dried and smoked is this brown color. So when they grind it up, you get that. You can get clear vanilla, but I don't know why you would. Forgot my eggs. One egg. Two eggs, sorry. I have a formatting issue on my thing apparently, and I just couldn't find my egg. I was like, wait. Alright, so there are my eggs. And then my buttermilk. And I'm going to use the same whisk. It's not a problem. It would be a problem if I was going to go from the wet to the dry, but I'm not. So I go ahead and pour in my buttermilk. You'll notice it kind of gets chunky. That's the curdling of the milk. And then I'm whipping it. And the whisking here is adding air, breaking up those eggs. And when you're baking, one of the most important things, if you've ever made a cake or cupcakes or something, and you mix and you mix and you mix once all the ingredients are together, and you get this really dense product, and it's really not one, it's actually kind of hard and heavy, not light the way you want a cake to be. The reason that happened is because you overmixed your ingredients all together. Not overmixing this, not overmixing this, but the two together create something called tunneling. And that tunneling causes a lack of air to hold. And what happens is then you get a very dense, heavy product and not one that's particularly good for what you want. So now I'm going to add these two together and mix just until combined. And I'm not even going to do that with the whisk. I'm actually going to do it with a rubber scraper just to be make sure that I don't actually overmix. And again, you can do this with a hand mixer or with a big mixer, but you don't really need to. I like to be able to show you guys how to do things without all the fancy equipment. That way you can make them at home, even if you don't have access to all the equipment. You don't have to be scared of that. The next thing that I'm going to do, and you can see I'm just stirring it, mixing, making sure all the dry bits get incorporated in. I'm scraping the sides, but I'm not mixing hard, okay? I'm not whipping and trying to take away texture or anything like that. Just getting it all blended together. All right. Is that the way? So that is that. That's what it looks like. And now I gotta get my pans ready. And the way I'm gonna do this is I actually went out when all of this started and I first thought about doing these demonstrations. I actually picked up some donut pans, but you don't actually need them. Again, fancy equipment versus what you can do at home. So if you don't have those, you can just use a muffin tin. And the way you do it with the muffin tin is you actually take some parchment paper and wad it up into a ball. So just take some parchment paper cut off a little corner, wad it up into a ball, and you stick it right in the middle, okay? And then once you do that and you put them all in, and then you put your donut batter in, you put it around it, and that holds that hole open, and then you can just pop this out afterwards. It's not that big of a deal, you know, but you can do it that way if you want to. If you have the donut pans, they work great. I didn't know how well they worked. I'd never used them before I started doing this, and I kind of played around. My family's kind of like tired of donuts. I am using Pam baking spray. This baking spray has flour in it, aerosolized, so when you use it, it actually ends up white on here, and what that does is that helps to release it without adding a lot of grease, okay? People ask me if I use aprons at home. I don't. I don't even own one, believe it or not. I only use them at school. I think I'd feel a little bit too much like a 50s housewife. And with my tendency to do cooking and sewing, I probably already qualify. So don't want to go there. Okay. Now I'm going to put my batter into a Ziploc bag. You don't have to do it this way. You can just spoon it in, but you can do it if you want to make it like nice and neat looking. You can put it in here. You can also do this with a pastry bag, but again, you can spoon it in. It's not that big of a deal. I always wish I had an extra set of hands for doing pastry bags. There's never enough hands for this. I guess they're little stands. I've seen people with like have stands for their pastry bags so that they can put the bag on the stand and then it holds it for you, but I've never invested in one. All right, and now I need a pair of scissors or a knife. I do have a good pair of utility scissors that I keep in my kitchen for just this sort of thing. I use them for a million things actually, but I want to hold the bag shut and squeeze as much of that batter down to the bottom as I can into one corner. And then I'm going to twist it. And that helps to prevent it from squeezing out. I'm just going to nip off the tip. And then I squeeze into the pan in a circle. Get an air pocket, squeeze them down. Perfect. One of the nice things about doing it with a pastry bag or the Ziploc method is that you get them fairly even so that they're all about the same, and then you don't end up with as much worry about things taking a long time to cook. Okay. Now these go into the oven for about 10 to 12 minutes. Again, 375. I'm going to, here's my oven. I'm going to put them one on the top rack on one side and one on the bottom rack on the other side. And what I will do halfway through is rotate them. So I'll move the bottom one up to the top one up to the bottom, and I'll rotate the pan clockwise as well. So I'm going to put a kitchen timer on for 5 minutes so that I know to rotate them in 5 minutes, and then I'll put them in back in, rotate them, put them in for another 5 minutes. Okay, hold that thought. It's like the magic of television. we will be right back. All right, welcome back to my all of a sudden cleaned up kitchen. My oven, you can see, is now 6 minutes on the timer. I just rotated them. We're gonna get ready for the toppings. So the topping is going to be 6 tablespoons of melted butter. I have my butter in my microwave. I'm just gonna start that melting process. I'm gonna do it, my microwave is pretty cool. It's really easy to set different heat strengths, so I just put it down to 30% for 30 seconds to hopefully not explode it, and just do it a little bit more gently. And then I need 1 cup of sugar, 2 tablespoons of cinnamon, and some more fresh grated nutmeg. And this is just a general recipe for a very basic cinnamon sugar. I like adding that nutmeg in. You don't have to if you don't want to. I just really love the flavor of nutmeg, so that's kind of why I do that. It's not about, it's just a personal preference thing. So 2 tablespoons of cinnamon. You can see my butter is still solid, so I'm going to put it in again. And I'm going to grate some more nutmeg. Pull out that same little pot I was working with earlier. And I'm just going to put some in there. I just love the flavor of nutmeg, so that's just why I do that. Put in as much or as little as much as you want. And that's it. Okay. Trying to clean as I go, and my sink is over there. All right. So my butter is melted now. Still got a little bit of chunky, but the butter itself will melt itself over the next few minutes, because I need to wait for these to come out of the oven in just a second anyway. And if you look, what I've done is put a piece of aluminum foil down and then a cooling rack on top. And the reason I did that is just to make cleanup easier, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the donuts here, and I'm going to use a brush to brush them with butter, so that the cinnamon, nutmeg, sugar actually adheres to it. I do need to just mix that up just a little bit. And I'm just using a regular spoon for it. It's not that big of a deal. And I know I tell you guys never to not depend on your timers, and that's fine. I'm not really depending on this, because I am checking them to make sure that they are turning the nice golden brown that I want them to be. But it gives you a good place to start, and especially I find when I'm doing it this way for everybody else, there's so many things that could come in and distract that I don't want to risk burning my donuts. Donuts are traditionally fried. And I hate frying, you guys know that. There's just the dangers of the splatters and getting burns, and what do you do with the hot grease after, and there's just so many things. So I really love the idea that you can bake donuts, but it also makes them a lot healthier. They're still donuts, guys. They're still not healthy, but they are better for you than the fried ones, certainly better than the ones you're gonna get at the store. That being said, there's also the fun of making something. Lots of different donut recipes out there. Lots of different flavors. I really want to try, there's an apple cider one that I want to try that I think would be really, really good, because I love apple cider donuts. And of course you can get chocolate and melt the chocolate and then dip the donuts, things like that. Facebook has had a lemon blueberry one going around for a while. That's fantastic. I ended up making those. That was the first ones I made, and they were really, really good, because I love those two flavors together. So we got about 2 minutes left on this. I'm going to use that time to put away my spices. My stove is really nice. It tells you when there's 1 minute, so it counts down for you. My giant bag of baking powder or baking soda. There are differences. These are my pot holders. They are made of silicone. I have different ones. I like to double them up. I find because this particular brand, they're not particularly durable. Well, I mean, they're durable. I've had them for about 10 years, but I find that it's less heat when you double up and they actually work just fine. Nice thing about these two is that they go right into the dishwasher when they get disgusting. I don't have to put them in a separate wash cycle, which is nice. All right. So my donuts are done. There they are. Okay. Oh, they smell good. Smell-o-vision. Smell-o-vision. All right, so what I can do now is I can just flip them right onto the cooling racks. They pop right out. Really makes it nice. And the pans are pretty easy to clean. You do need to hand wash these guys because they are that non-stick. And if you put non-stick pans in the dishwasher, the dishwashing detergent for the dishwasher and the level of which they work actually gets to a temperature where it eats away at that non-stick coating. And then you end up with, you know, the thing, it being the non-stick coating wearing off a lot faster than it needs to. Okay. And they do, you can just pop them right out. Okay. All right. If you don't have a brush, you can just do this with a spoon, or you can dip, you can dip your donuts into butter, or you can just use the pour method. It's really not that big of a deal. But you can also actually just get a paintbrush. Believe it or not, you can get a paintbrush. And as long as all you use it for is food and you wash it correctly, it's not a problem. I know lots of chefs who do it that way. I like the convenience of this one can go in the dishwasher because it is silicone as well. And that also allows me to use it when I'm basting meats on the grill. I love to cook on my grill. I have both. What's under here is actually an indoor grill and griddle. So I can flip the cast iron and use it as a griddle on one side to make things like French toast and eggs. But I can also use it on, and pancakes, but I can also flip it the other way and use it as an indoor grill, which is really nice. It's one of the things I love about this kitchen. And then this is, then I also have a grill on my back patio. And I do that, and I use the brush for basting, and because it is silicone, I can even use it on the grill and it's not going to burn. That's the big advantage to using this one. All right, so I used my butter, and then I'm going to take my donuts and I'm just going to dip them in the sugar. That's it. Okay, and the butter acts like a glue to hold the cinnamon and sugar and nutmeg mixture on. And then they're ready for eating, and that's it. It's really simple. They're not hard to make. Again, you don't need all the fancy equipment. You can do this with a muffin tin, and it works just fine. There are lots and lots of recipes out there for different donuts, and you can enjoy. Okay, and I really wish that I could be sharing these with you guys because I'm sure that this would be a lot of fun, and I had a whole lot of things we were going to be doing in terms of activities. Like this week, if we had been in school, we would have been making chocolate bars for all of the staff at Woodson. Make your own chocolate bars, so that they would have had specialty chocolate bars made by the students as a teacher and staff appreciation. But obviously we can't do that, and I really am sorry. So I'm gonna go wash my hands, and I'm gonna have a donut.